Raphael Mechoulam, who is known as the father of medicinal marijuana. He's here from Jerusalem, and you're here for a conference, but you're here with the Friends of the Hebrew University, and that's why you're here this week.
That's correct. There is a neuroscience meeting, and I was invited to give a lecture, so I flew over to give the lecture at the meeting.
Well, let's talk about your amazing career, because you were really the first person in the world to research marijuana.
Yes, it was. We started many, many years ago. It was strange because morphine had been isolated from opium 100 years previously, and cocaine had been isolated many, many years ago, and yet the chemistry of cannabis was not well known. So I thought at that time, and I still think it was a good suggestion, good idea, to go ahead and clarify the chemistry so it may become possible to do the biochemistry, the pharmacology, and see in patients what these compounds do.
Right.
And this is what has happened.
Yeah. At that particular time, was it considered radical for you to be doing that kind of research on that, or was it, you know, nowadays it's more accepted, obviously, but what about then?
Well, it was not really accepted. As a matter of fact, I had asked for a grant from a National Institute of Health in the US, and they wrote me back, well, it's not relevant, nobody uses marijuana here, why don't you find something more relevant?
And we're talking, this is in the 1960s, right?
Right.
Early 1960s. So a few years later, a year later actually, somebody flew over and said it has become relevant within a year. Turned out that somebody who was apparently important had asked them, the National Institute of Health, what they know about it, because his son apparently had been found smoking pot, and he wanted to know.
So all of a sudden he was interested, right?
He wanted to know whether it's destroying his mind or something.
Right.
Oh, it does happen here, is what they said.
Yes. So at that time, we had just isolated the active material, the active compound, THC.
For the very first time you did
and
that.
they took it over. I think they smuggled it, actually. And they went to the States, and for the next couple of years, most of the research on that particular compound was done with material that we sent with them. And, but since then, there has been a huge amount of research on both this compound, additional compounds, compounds that we found are formed in the brain, that THC mimics their action, the endogenous cannabinoids, endocannabinoids. So there has been a huge, huge amount of work, and we know quite a bit. But what is really missing are the clinical trials. I mean, there are very, very few clinical trials, well-designed clinical trials, they should be, with placebo effects and everything that's one should do in a clinical trial. There are very few. So here we have a problem, because if somebody, a physician, cannot tell a patient take cannabis because we don't have enough clinical data.
Right. You're really talking about pain management, and a lot of people are citing your research now for using cannabis as a pain management tool.
That's true, but there are also other things. In Israel, cannabis is regulated. It is legal in the sense that the Ministry of Health has to give approval for every single case, but it's medical cannabis is approved, and most of the cases are for pain.
Right. So you can't just sort of do it in like a coffee shop or something?
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
A physician has to apply.
Right.
A patient cannot apply directly. A physician has to apply to the ministry, explain why he recommends, and then the patient can get officially from one of the farms or one of the dealers has to obtain the material he needs. And here is a problem, because he has to use the same type of cannabis. Cannabis is not a medicine. It's not exactly the same. The constituents change.
How it's grown and things like that. So, you know, you obviously have heard of Washington State and Colorado and then making it legal and all that. Do you, as a researcher, do you take a stance on where you are on medicinal marijuana? Can you take a stance, or you just are more of a researcher?
Well, yes. One should differentiate between recreational and medicinal.
Right.
And
there's a big difference.
Yes. Obviously.
Yeah.
And I'm very much for medicinal cannabis, but it should be very well regulated so that the patient will know what he's getting. If he gets it for certain disease, the next time he gets it, it should be the same, like with a drug. If you're used to a drug or the drug helps you,
right,
then the next time you want to get exactly the same.
Right.
And this is not always the case with cannabis. So it should be well regulated so that the person should get it. I had a case recently. Mother came with her child, and he has epilepsy, and the first batch that they got contained a lot of another compound called cannabidiol, and it helped the kid very much. The second time they took it, it didn't help, and when I analyzed the two batches, it turned out that the second one contained much less cannabidiol than the first one. This is not a way to use a medicine.
Right. So you think one day people will be prescribed a pill that is a...
Well, there are no pills at the moment. They will be, probably quite soon. And as a matter of fact, in Germany now they're using pills against certain psychiatric diseases. But again, it should be well regulated. One should know exactly what's in there. It should be as close as possible to a
So if you take
medicine.
Advil or whatever it is, you're getting the same thing next time you take it.
Right.
Exactly. Yes.
So where are you going to be speaking? Tell everyone where you're going to be speaking.
Well, I gave a lecture yesterday at a meeting of the International Society for Neuropsychopharmacology, mostly psychiatrists and researchers in the field, and they were interested to see what's happening with cannabis and cannabinoids, because they act on all kinds of psychiatric diseases. And one has to know exactly what these compounds do. They act on anxiety, they act on schizophrenia, they act on depression, but not every compound acts the same way. So one has to go into great detail to find out exactly what's needed.
And so today you're going to be speaking at the Pan Pacific Hotel? And
right. It has been going on for the last 3 or 4 days. I gave my lecture yesterday.
Oh, I see.
All right,
okay.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you.
Fascinating research.
Amazing career you've had in a very sort of underserved area. Thank you so much for coming in.
Nice to meet you.
Thanks for inviting me.
All right, Caitlin?
Thank you, guys. And I'm keeping a close eye